Have you ever stood near the edge of a cliff and felt your legs tremble, even though you were perfectly safe? This uniquely human reaction reveals something profound about our suffering. Unlike animals who only experience pain when threats are actually present, humans suffer differently. A deer returns to peaceful grazing moments after escaping a wolf, but we? We can feel terrified simply by imagining falling from that cliff. Our bodies respond to mere thoughts as if they were reality. Heart racing, palms sweating, all from words and images in our minds. This is what psychologist Stephen Hayes calls the language trap. The same remarkable ability that lets us solve complex problems and build civilizations also creates suffering that would otherwise not exist. We worry about events from years ago. We feel anxiety about problems that might never happen. We even suffer about our suffering. Why can't I get over this? No other creature does this. Hayes discovered this trap firsthand. During a faculty meeting in his 20s, he experienced a devastating panic attack. Though the physical symptoms eventually passed, his mind created a new problem. What if it happens again? This thought, this product of language, created fear about fear itself. He began organizing his entire life around avoiding panic, which only strengthened anxiety's grip. Our language abilities brilliantly solve external problems, building bridges or developing vaccines. Our analytical thinking shines, but when we turn that same problem-solving approach inward, trying to fix uncomfortable thoughts and feelings, we often make things worse. When Hayes tried controlling his panic by avoiding triggers or telling himself to calm down, these strategies provided temporary relief but ultimately fed the cycle. The more he tried not to think about panic, the more it dominated his life. We see this pattern everywhere. With depression, I shouldn't feel this way. With grief, I should be over this by now. With pain, I can't stand this feeling. Our minds tell us that if we can just control unwanted experiences, suppress them, avoid them, replace them with positive ones, we'll be okay. But here's the paradox. This control strategy, which works so well in the external world, backfires with our inner experiences. The more we try to control unwanted thoughts and feelings, the more they control us. If you touch a hot stove, pulling your hand away prevents further injury. That's useful. But what about chronic pain or the emotional pain of rejection? Trying to pull away often means restricting our lives, avoiding meaningful activities, or numbing ourselves with distractions. The very strategies we use to escape pain end up diminishing our lives. The language trap affects everyone. Your mind is likely evaluating right now whether this applies to you. That's your language-based mind doing exactly what it evolved to do: analyze and problem solve. The question isn't whether we have this kind of mind. We all do. The question is whether we can develop a new relationship with it, one that doesn't leave us paralyzed at the edge of life's cliffs, but allows us to move forward even with shaky legs. Chapter 2. The Quicksand of Control. Why fighting pain makes it worse. Imagine you're sinking in emotional quicksand. What's your first instinct? Most of us struggle frantically, desperately trying to escape uncomfortable feelings. But just like with real quicksand, the more you fight against painful thoughts and emotions, the deeper you sink. This paradox sits at the core of human suffering. Our natural response to psychological pain, trying to control, avoid, or eliminate it, typically makes that pain worse over time. When we attempt to suppress thoughts, our brain's monitoring system actually heightens awareness of exactly what we're trying to avoid. Three powerful forces trap us in this control cycle. First, our biological wiring. The human brain evolved to detect threats and avoid pain. Brilliant for physical dangers but disastrous with psychological discomfort. When anxiety registers as a threat, it triggers the same fight-or-flight response that would help you escape a predator. But you can't outrun your own thoughts. Second, social reinforcement. Our culture celebrates emotional control. We admire those who appear unshakable and never vulnerable. Harvard research shows 75% of adults believe showing negative emotions signals weakness. This message bombards us daily, from colleagues bragging about handling extreme pressure to advertisements featuring perpetually happy people. Third, and most deceptive, control strategies provide immediate relief. Hayes calls this the short-term relief trap. Distract yourself with social media, momentary calm, avoid fear-triggering situations, instant comfort, have a drink after a stressful day, temporary relaxation. But what works now often destroys later. Take Robert, who had a panic attack while driving on the highway. He developed elaborate safety strategies: only side roads, never rush hour, windows down, specific music playing, knowing every hospital location along his route. These rules reduced his immediate anxiety, but multiplied from 3 to 17 over 6 months. His driving radius shrank from 30 miles to just 5. His solution became his prison. This pattern repeats across many forms of suffering. The person with social anxiety declines invitations, feels immediate relief, but grows increasingly isolated. Someone using food to cope with emotions gets momentary comfort, but develops health issues, creating more suffering. The executive working 80-hour weeks to avoid feeling inadequate gains temporary distraction, but loses connection with family and self. Why do control strategies backfire? 2 key mechanisms explain this. First, they heighten sensitivity to what you're trying to avoid. Brain imaging shows that suppressing thoughts activates the anterior cingulate cortex, your brain's error detection system. This creates a monitoring process that ironically makes you more aware of unwanted thoughts. It's like telling yourself, "Don't think about a pink elephant." The instruction guarantees the thought appears. Second, avoidance prevents new learning and shrinks your life. Each time you avoid discomfort, you miss discovering you can handle it. Your fear remains unchallenged. Meanwhile, your world gets smaller as you eliminate more activities to maintain comfort. Behavioral economists call this domain restriction, a measurable reduction in life activities that accelerates over time. For people with panic disorder, the comfortable travel radius typically decreases by about 2 miles every month. They maintain avoidance behaviors. The alternative isn't giving up or resigning yourself to suffering. It's developing what Hayes calls psychological flexibility. Being present with difficult experiences while still moving toward what matters to you. Think of it this way: if you're struggling in quicksand, the counterintuitive solution is to lie back and float. Not because you want to stay there forever, but because you've recognized that struggling makes things worse. Floating gives you the best chance to eventually reach solid ground. Similarly, when you stop fighting against anxiety, sadness, or self-doubt, you create space to move toward meaningful activities despite those feelings. The goal isn't to feel better, but to better feel, to develop a relationship with your inner experiences that doesn't let them control your actions. This challenge has intensified in our digital age. The average person checks their phone 96 times daily, once every 10 minutes of waking life. Each check offers a hit of distraction from uncomfortable thoughts or feelings. Our technology has become the most accessible control strategy in human history, making it harder than ever to develop the skill of being present with discomfort. The path forward begins with a simple but profound shift: recognizing when you're caught in the quicksand of control. Notice when you're fighting against your own experience, pushing away anxiety, arguing with self-critical thoughts, or numbing emotional pain. This awareness itself creates a moment of choice where new possibilities can emerge. Chapter 3. Cognitive Fusion: When Thoughts Become Reality. Have you ever been lying in bed at 3 a.m., completely consumed by a thought that seemed absolutely real and terrifying? That mistake at work suddenly convinces you you'll be fired tomorrow. This overwhelming feeling where thoughts become reality is cognitive fusion. Picture this: you're about to give an important presentation when the thought hits, "I'm going to mess this up." Suddenly, it's not just words in your mind, it's your reality. Your heart races, palms sweat, and you consider backing out. That thought has literally changed your body and behavior. Our minds evolved not just to describe reality, but to predict threats. For our ancestors, treating "that might be a predator" as absolutely real could save their lives. In our modern world, this same mechanism creates unnecessary suffering. Try this simple experiment. Notice the saliva in your mouth right now. Feels neutral, right? Now imagine spitting into a clean glass and drinking it back. Feel that disgust? Fascinating. It's the exact same saliva, only your thoughts about it changed. That visceral response came purely from how your mind framed the situation. When fused with thoughts, we don't experience them as mental events. They become our reality. It's like getting so absorbed in a horror movie that your body responds with genuine fear, despite sitting safely in a theater. Jessica, a talented painter, hadn't touched a canvas in 2 years, despite painting being her lifelong passion. Whenever she tried, thoughts would appear. This isn't good enough. Real artists don't struggle like this. These weren't experienced as passing thoughts. They were absolute truths defining her identity. The fusion was so complete she abandoned her greatest joy. Cognitive fusion disconnects us from direct experience. Instead of responding to what's actually happening, we respond to our thoughts about what's happening. We live in a conceptualized world rather than engaging with the real one. This explains why logical arguments often fail to help people in emotional distress. If someone is fused with "I'm worthless," listing their accomplishments won't help because they're not experiencing it as a thought. They're experiencing it as reality. Your evidence exists in a different realm than their truth. Brain research shows when we're fused with negative thoughts, our threat detection system activates as if facing physical danger. A UCLA study found that simply labeling emotions, a basic diffusion technique, reduced amygdala activity by 30%, while increasing activity in the rational thinking areas of the brain. So how do we break free? Through cognitive diffusion, creating distance between ourselves and our thoughts so we can see them for what they are. Just thoughts. Here's a powerful technique called the milk exercise. Choose a troubling thought like, "I'm not good enough." Now repeat just the word "milk" rapidly for 30 seconds. Notice how it loses meaning and becomes just a strange sound. Now do the same with your troubling thought. Most people find the thought loses its emotional punch. You're experiencing it as what it actually is. Just sounds, not reality. Studies show people who practice this technique for just 2 minutes report a 40% reduction in the emotional impact of negative self-statements. The thoughts remain, but without the same power. Another approach transforms abstract thoughts into concrete sensory experiences. If anxiety appears, ask, if this anxiety had a shape, color, weight, texture, or temperature, what would it be? This transforms vague concepts into specific experiences you can observe rather than be consumed by. Michael, an executive with severe presentation anxiety, described his anxiety as a red, pulsing ball about the size of a grapefruit in my chest. This allowed him to say, "I notice that red ball is here again," rather than "I am anxious." During presentations, he'd mentally acknowledge, "Hello, red ball, I see you're here for this meeting too." This didn't eliminate his anxiety, but changed his relationship with it, allowing him to function effectively despite its presence. The thought labeling technique works well in high-pressure situations. When a difficult thought appears, simply prefix it with, "I'm having the thought that," instead of "I'll fail this presentation." Try, "I'm having the thought that I'll fail this presentation." Studies show people using this technique report 25% less distress than those trying to suppress anxious thoughts. Some find it helpful to give their mind a character. A client struggling with perfectionism named her inner critic the drill sergeant. When harsh judgments arose, she'd say, "The drill sergeant is shouting again," creating immediate distance and often bringing a smile. Even simple physical movement can disrupt fusion. When caught in negative thought spirals, changing your body position, standing up, stretching, taking a brief walk can break the pattern. Because fusion involves both mental and physical components. Crucially, diffusion isn't about eliminating difficult thoughts. The goal isn't having different thoughts, but holding your existing thoughts more lightly, seeing them as mental events rather than reality. This distinction matters because attempts to eliminate unwanted thoughts typically backfire, as we saw with the control paradox. Think of cognitive fusion like being swept away in a strong current. Diffusion is finding a rock to stand on in that river. Your thoughts still flow, but now you have a stable place to observe them rather than being carried away. After weeks of practicing diffusion, Jessica returned to painting. The critical thoughts still appeared, but she could recognize them as thoughts, not truths. She developed a ritual of saying, "Thank you, mind, for that thought," whenever her inner critic spoke up. This created space between her and the thought, allowing her to continue painting. 6 months later, she held her first exhibition in years. The power of diffusion lies in its simplicity. You don't need to analyze why you have certain thoughts or replace negative ones with positive ones. You simply learn to hold them differently, seeing them as what they are, words and images passing through your awareness, not defining truths about who you are or what's possible for you. Chapter 4. Finding your observing self, beyond the stories in your head. Have you ever felt intense anxiety, then suddenly noticed a voice in your head saying, "I'm feeling anxious right now"? Who exactly is that I that notices the anxiety? This question reveals something profound about human consciousness that can transform your relationship with suffering. ACT identifies 3 distinct ways we experience ourselves. First, there's the conceptualized self, the story we tell about who we are. I'm shy. I'm a failure. I'm someone who always struggles with depression. This becomes problematic when we believe we are nothing more than these labels. Take Martin, a corporate attorney who defined himself entirely by his career. When restructuring left him unemployed at 52, he didn't just lose a job, he lost his identity. "If I'm not a successful attorney," he asked in therapy, "then who am I?" The second way we experience ourselves is through moment-to-moment awareness of our changing experiences, noticing thoughts, feelings, and sensations as they happen, acknowledging their temporary nature. But there's a third, more powerful perspective, the observing self. This is pure awareness, the part of you that notices all experiences without being defined by any of them. Think of your thoughts and feelings as weather patterns, sometimes stormy, sometimes clear. Your observing self is like the sky that holds all weather. No matter how violent the storm, the sky remains unharmed. This perspective is liberating because regardless of what you think, feel, or remember, there's a part of you that remains constant. One direct route to experiencing this observing self is through the leaves on a stream, exercise. Imagine sitting beside a flowing stream with leaves floating by. When thoughts arise, place each one on a leaf and watch it float away. Don't try to change your thoughts, just observe them coming and going. What most people discover is that there's a part of them that can observe thoughts without being those thoughts. When we access this perspective, we create space between ourselves and difficult experiences. We can carry pain without being defined by it. Hayes suggests holding pain like a delicate flower, with gentleness and a certain distance. You acknowledge its presence without letting it consume you, or think of it as carrying a crying baby. You don't become the crying, you remain the one who holds it. You can respond with compassion without losing yourself in the distress. Sarah, who lived with chronic pain, found this transformative. For years, she defined herself as a pain patient. Through mindfulness practices, she began to access her observing self, shifting from "I am in pain" to "I notice pain in my back." This subtle change created space for her to engage with life despite ongoing physical sensations. The observing self is always available, even in moments of intense emotion. During difficult times, simply ask yourself, who's noticing this? If you're feeling anxious, who's aware of the anxiety? This question points directly to your observing self and creates immediate psychological space. As we continue exploring ACT, this perspective will become increasingly important. It provides the foundation for making room for difficult experiences while moving toward what matters most in your life. Chapter 5. The Life Bus. Taking Back the Driver's Seat. Have you ever noticed that the harder you try to control your anxiety or negative thoughts, the more your life seems to shrink? This paradox sits at the heart of one of ACT's most powerful metaphors. Imagine your life is like a bus, and you're the driver. On this bus ride with you are all your thoughts, emotions, and memories as passengers. Some are pleasant companions, your joy, excitement, creativity. Others are difficult, your anxiety, self-doubt, and fears. Most of us make a critical mistake in how we handle these difficult passengers. When anxiety starts screaming that you'll fail or self-criticism tells you you're not enough, we either try to kick these passengers off or, worse, hand them the steering wheel. I know a talented musician named Marcus who made exactly this deal with his anxiety. His fear about performing gradually dictated where he could play music. What began as avoiding certain venues ended with his world shrinking until he barely performed at all. His anxiety kept changing the terms, and he kept complying. ACT proposes something revolutionary yet beautifully simple. What if you acknowledged all passengers, welcomed them even, but kept your hands firmly on the wheel? This means telling anxiety, I see you back there. Shout all you want about how I might fail. Get louder if you need to, but I'm still driving this bus toward what matters to me. It means saying to self-doubt, yes, you're here too. I hear your concerns, and I'm still going to take actions aligned with my values. This brings us to the crucial question, where do you actually want to drive your bus? In ACT, these directions are called values, the qualities you want to embody in your ongoing actions. They're not endpoints you reach, but ways of being you continuously express. Being a loving parent is a value. Getting your child into a prestigious college is a goal. To clarify your values, try this. Imagine you're at your own funeral and someone who knew you well is speaking. What would you want them to say about how you lived, the qualities you embodied, how you treated others, what you stood for? In those heartfelt words lie your deepest values. Elena, a marketing executive, discovered through this exercise that while financial security mattered, what she valued more deeply was creative expression and mentoring others. Her anxiety had been driving her towards safe projects that left her unfulfilled. By reconnecting with her values, she began taking on innovative campaigns and started a mentorship program, even though these choices initially triggered more anxiety. Remember, clarifying your values isn't about adding pressure or shoulds to your life. Values aren't imposed from outside. They're what matter at your core. And they're not about perfection. You can value honesty while sometimes being dishonest. The point is, noticing when you've veered off course and gently redirecting. Many people discover they've been driving in circles, letting difficult passengers determine their route for so long they've forgotten where they actually want to go. If that's you, be gentle with yourself. This awareness is your first step toward reclaiming the driver's seat. What makes this approach transformative is how it changes our relationship with suffering. When we're willing to carry difficult thoughts and feelings while moving toward our values, those experiences shift. They don't disappear, but they become less defining. They transform from roadblocks into just part of the scenery on your journey. Chapter 6. Committed Action. From Values to Reality. Imagine sitting in the driver's seat of your life bus, map in hand, destination clear, but the vehicle still in park. This is where committed action comes in. The moment you finally press the gas pedal and transform all those psychological flexibility skills into real-world change. Knowing your values is essential, but at some point, you need to put the bus in drive. When you do, those difficult passengers, your thoughts, emotions, and memories, will likely start making quite a racket. Committed action means moving forward anyway. What makes this challenging is the inevitable cycle we all face: commit, break, recommit. Think about how children learn to walk. They stand up, fall down, and get right back up again. They don't think, well, I've fallen 7 times today. Clearly walking isn't for me. Yet as adults, we often follow a different pattern: commit, break, abandon. We try something new, make a mistake, and decide we're not cut out for it. The irony? We all mastered the commit, break, recommit cycle as children. It's how we learned everything important: walking, talking, reading, riding a bike. Somewhere along the way, many of us switched to the commit, break, abandon cycle, especially in areas where we feel vulnerable. This brings us to pattern smashing, deliberately challenging our comfort zone to expand psychological flexibility. Teresa, a perfectionist, provides a perfect example. Her apartment had to be immaculate before anyone could visit, often preventing her from socializing altogether. In therapy, she agreed to an experiment, deliberately leaving her apartment slightly messy when having friends over. Her anxiety spiked dramatically that first time, but she noticed something fascinating. None of her friends even cared. This small act of courage began loosening perfectionism's grip on her life, and within months, she was hosting dinner parties without the previous day's cleaning frenzy. James, a corporate lawyer with social anxiety, tried something similar. Paralyzed by fear of saying something stupid in meetings, he deliberately mispronounced a client's name, then corrected himself. When he survived this minor embarrassment, something shifted. The client barely reacted, and James realized he could handle social discomfort and still function effectively. This small pattern smash eventually led him to voluntarily lead presentations, something previously unthinkable. When we stumble in our committed actions, and we will stumble, self-compassion becomes essential. Michael, an entrepreneur, transformed his internal dialogue from "I'm a failure, I should just give up," after losing a major client, to "This is really difficult. Many entrepreneurs face similar challenges. What would help me move forward right now?" The next time his company faced a crisis with a delayed product launch, instead of spiraling into self-criticism, he gathered his team, acknowledged their collective disappointment, and focused on solutions. His employees later said this was the moment they knew the company would succeed long-term. Michael's ability to stay present with difficulty rather than avoid it allowed him to embody his values as a leader even during crisis. The beauty of committed action lies in its simplicity. Small, consistent steps aligned with your values create momentum. Rebecca, a writer who hadn't written in years due to fear of judgment, committed to writing just 100 words daily. Some days those words sparkled, other days they fell flat. But the consistent action reconnected her with her creative expression. 6 months later, she had completed a short story collection and developed a new relationship with her creative process that embraced both inspiration and struggle. Committed action also requires psychological flexibility, adapting behavior as circumstances change while keeping values as your North Star. Carlos valued being an attentive father and initially thought this meant perfect attendance at every school event. When work occasionally made this impossible, he'd feel he'd failed. Through therapy, he realized being an attentive father might look different day to day, sometimes attending the soccer game, other times calling afterward or leaving a note in a lunchbox. The form changed, but the value remained consistent. What transformed Carlos's experience was letting go of rigid rules about what made him a good father, and instead asking, "How can I express care for my children in this particular situation?" This flexibility allowed him to navigate the inevitable conflicts between work and family with greater wisdom and less self-judgment. Sometimes rearranging his